recording. So with that, the meeting is being recorded. Please mute your mics if you're not speaking, and if you can and are able to, when you do wish to speak, start your video. That'd be helpful for the recording. With that, I will go ahead and start the roll call for the council members that are at today's meeting. And for anyone that is not a council member, please go ahead and use the chat and include your name and the organization you're with. And that would help us kind of keep track of who's attending the meeting. With that, I'll go ahead and start with our chair, our co-chair.
Hi, good morning. I'm Karen Mogus, co-chair of the Monitoring Council, representing Cali, PA. Thanks,
Karen. As you're all aware, Mark Gold, our previous co-chair, is no longer at the CNRA, but is Josh, are you on the call? Likely not. Okay, let's go on to the drinking water program.
Hi, this is Andrew Altevogt, Assistant Deputy Director with the Division of Drinking Water, State Water Board.
Hi, Andrew, thanks. Public health.
Hi, this is Mark Starr. I'm State Environmental Health Director and Deputy Director for Environmental Health at the California Department of Public Health.
Thanks, Mark. Let's go regulated community, POTWs, publicly owned treatment works.
Hi, I'm Lori Infono, Executive Director of the Bay Area Clean Water Agencies, representing the wastewater community.
And regulated community stormwater.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Grant Sharp with Orange County Public Works, representing regulated stormwater community.
Thanks, Grant. Agriculture, we need to update that. I don't know if Mark Cady's on the line.
Mark Cady's here. Hi, Mark Cady, California Department of Food and Agriculture, representing agriculture.
Thanks, Mark. Community monitoring groups.
Hey, Helen Vitanides with CR Streams Institute, representing community monitoring groups.
Hi, Helen. Nice to see you. The public. I think I saw Ray.
Good morning, everyone. Ray Heimster with Orange County Housekeeping, representing the public.
Right. Thanks, Ray. The scientific community, the non-academic. Steve.
Hi, Steve Weisberg from the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project Authority.
Hi, Steve. And the scientific community, academic or academia.
Hi, Krista Kamer, California State University Council on Ocean Affairs, Science and Technology Coast for academic scientific community.
Hi, good morning, Krista. And water supply.
Good morning, everybody. This is Peter Vroom, City of San Diego, representing the water supply sector.
Thanks. Wow, we got everybody represented. That's great. As far as USCPA, which usually has a liaison non-voting role, I still need to follow up with them to figure out who will be filling in for Terry Fleming, who is retired. Great. With that, concludes our roll call. Thanks everybody for attending. With that, the agenda review, we have a shortened agenda, so it's pretty straightforward. We're going to do our normal kind of public forum will be next, along with our updates, council member updates, followed by the director updates from myself. And then we have our kind of only item is going to be by Ken Schiff on a recently published report from SCWRP, and will be really interesting on adaptive management monitoring strategies for that. He's going to give a live demo. He won't be on until right at the time he's supposed to present, so we'll see him then. And then lastly, we'll just go into planning for next year. We'll talk a little bit about dates that work for the council members that are here. That'll kind of, I'm glad that everybody is here so we can pick some dates that kind of placemakers for them, and then also talk about continuing kind of the strategy that was put into place when Mark Gold was still here, and with Karen to have kind of an in-person / hybrid meeting and then follow it up with a virtual one like this, or do we want to pivot? So kind of talk about that. I circulated the action items a couple weeks ago, just before the holiday. Didn't receive any comments, so unless there's any comments now, we'll go ahead and consider those finalized. If you have any comments, you can raise your hand or speak up. Not seeing any. All right, public forum. Is there anybody from the public that is on the call that would like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda? If so, go ahead and raise your hand and I can call on you. There's about 30 people on the call, so. Okay, not seeing any. Go ahead and shift to council member updates. We'll go ahead and start with Karen at the top of the list.
I think that, well, I guess I'll mention a couple and they're related. The first is, I think that I, at our last meeting, mentioned the governor's water supply strategy that was finalized in August. It has some pretty aggressive timelines for us to be working on identifying potential projects for recycled water and removing barriers to getting those projects in place. The second component is also investigating ways that we can increase brackish groundwater desalination in the state, and streamlining permitting and making amendments to the ocean plan to make clear the requirements for permitting ocean desalination projects. And finally, looking at the potential for stormwater capture and use and incentivizing and supporting getting those types of projects in place. And among other things, there's some conservation and water rights tasks in the strategy as well. This is just to say that my division at the water boards, and I guess I'm announcing this less as the co-chair of the council and more as the deputy director of the Division of Water Quality at State Board, that will be really making a concerted effort to meet the goals and deadlines that are in the water supply strategy, and they are quite aggressive. I'm going to focus the rest of my comments on the recycled water piece because it also relates to some of the ocean acidification modeling that this group has been doing, and some efforts that we will be working with POTWs that discharge to the ocean, and also are proposing recycled water projects to include nutrient removal. So it's a bit of a messaging issue for us in terms of supporting and encouraging more recycled water, but then also trying to do it in a way that minimizes impacts to the environment, including ocean acidification and hypoxia. So the reason I'm mentioning it here today is I think that there's some opportunities for coordination among the council and the work that we're doing, particularly with stormwater, I think, and the data that we need to be able to meaningfully estimate what's the potential for stormwater capture in the state, and where it may be feasible and fruitful in terms of water supply. So I don't have anything specific to bring up today. This is more of a situational awareness update, and as things progress, I'll keep y'all posted, and we'll see if there's a working group to the council that may be particularly well suited to partner and work with us as we really dive into what it's going to take to what the water supply strategy says is find new water, which I find it a little bit funny, but at any rate, that's what we're charged with, is finding new water in this hotter, drier state that we are experiencing as a result of climate change. I guess I'd also like to touch on one other item that the water boards is really putting a lot of effort into, which is racial equity and diversity. And I know we have a working group that has initiated discussions of how those topic areas in that initiative, how the monitoring council can support that and incorporate those concepts into the work we do across all of the working groups. I wanted to mention it because one of the big issues that arises when we are talking about incorporating racial equity into our program areas is data. And while it's not water quality monitoring data, we certainly want to be able to have good demographic data that allows us to overlay it with our water quality information in order for us to focus and prioritize where we're going to put our resources to advance correcting former environmental injustices, as well as acknowledging the need to address racial equity as part of the work that we do. So I think that there will be good opportunity for that working group to really engage in that effort, and just wanted to flag that as something that I'd like to maybe join one of the work group meetings. I don't know how frequently they're meeting at this stage, but and talk about how we can partner in the work that we're doing at the Water Board. So I think that's all I wanted to mention. I didn't make a list, which is usually a bad idea for me because I don't remember things when I don't make a list. But maybe Nick, if you had anything that you wanted to remind me to say, I don't.
I'm going to mention it briefly, but you mentioned in correspondence late last night about AB 1066 potentially.
Yeah. So did you want me to wait till you give an update? Or?
That's fine. Yeah. Or
okay. I was going to incorporate it into
Great.
your comments and just add to your update.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay. So CNRA is not on the call today, so we'll go ahead and go to Andrew or Christine or Christine.
Hi, I don't have anything to report from drinking water. I don't know if Christine has anything though.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. I think the last time we met, I mentioned that we were at the cusp of offering microplastics accreditation testing in drinking water. And so that has since been offered, and that was 3 months ago. And so we're the first in the world to offer accreditation for microplastics analysis. And that, as you know, that those methods, 2 methods were developed by SQUIRP in coordination with Division of Drinking Water. So we're looking forward to accrediting the first lab to do that. That's all I have for my report.
Thanks, Christine. That's exciting. Congratulations. Okay, Mark Starr for Public Health.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Hear me okay?
Yes.
Just a couple items. First one, wastewater surveillance continues to go quite well, and really appreciate the collaborations with water boards and Stanford and UC Berkeley and several other universities and many others that have helped make this happen. Our laboratory, the Drinking Water and Radiation Laboratory in CDPH is currently doing some of the core testing of wastewater for COVID surveillance, and the ramping up over the next year to about 75 sites. I think it's currently around 20, and those are tested 3 times a week. So a lot of activity there to have the infrastructure, staffing, equipment, and so on in place for that. And just really a shout out to the whole process, the work of the subgroup. I see Steve Weisberg on and his team. Everybody has and continues to do a great job in making this be a successful effort for surveillance. And it's not useful not only for COVID, but also for influenza, RSV that we're currently in the midst of. It's an important one. Mpox, monkeypox, and other conditions also. So really validating our lab's work against other labs. There's just a lot of steps that were done to make this go, and a lot more to be done, but really appreciate that. The other quick update I had was on AB 1066, which is later in the agenda, so we can talk about it more then. We have one dedicated staff working on that, but I'll hold on that till we get to that discussion. And then the last item, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I wanted to mention that I'm retiring at the end of the year, calendar year. And so I've been on this council for just about a year, and sorry to have to leave so soon. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm really pleased to be able to kind of reestablish the public health role and seat on the council and be part of that. So it's really been short but sweet run for me. And then I would like to nominate Anthony Chu, who's also on the meeting with us. I think council members are able to nominate members as well. So I'd like to nominate Anthony Chu to be my replacement on the council. And just a quick introduction of him is he's head of the Division of Radiation Safety and Environmental Management in my Center for Environmental Health. And his division has a number of programs relevant to the council. Things like recreational water, which we'll be talking about the inland beach monitoring with AB 1066 in a moment, but also beach water monitoring, which has been around for years. Public pools, things like that. There's also the pre-harvest shellfish safety program, so marine waters and the importance in shellfish growing and harvesting. The wastewater testing I already mentioned is also in his division, the COVID wastewater testing. We have a little known program called NERP, which is Nuclear Emergency Response Program, but we're responsible for public health impacts if there's a accident at the remaining nuclear power plant in California in Diablo Canyon, which could, of course, affect waters as well, both marine and freshwater. His program has medical waste and many others. So anyway, he's excited to hopefully be able to join. So just want to put that name out in nomination. He's before us, he was with the Department of Water Resources, and he's done some civilian environmental work for Department of Defense and other consulting. So I think he'll be great for this seat. And then I'll just mention also that Dave Mazzaro, who is our alternate, he will continue in that role, is willing to continue in that role. So that would not change. So if I can formally nominate now, if this is the appropriate time, nominate Anthony Chu to take the public health seat beginning in January, that would be great.
Oh, that's great. Fantastic, Mark. Yes, is the appropriate time. Sad to see you go. It's been a pleasure working with you in the short amount of time, but I'm sure well-deserved retirement. Congratulations. As far as process with the nomination, assuming there's no other nominations, what the process would be is, Karen and myself will meet with Anthony and just have like a informal discussion and talk about the council a little bit more, answer any questions he might have. And then there's a couple more formal processes within the governance document. We would then write a formal letter to the secretaries, providing kind of Anthony's qualifications and background information, including the nomination from Mark. And then there's a kind of an interim period that we could have Anthony on the council, assuming he was the replacement choice. And then as we wait for the secretaries to kind of confirm confirm Anthony as the replacement and representative on the council. So that would be a little bit of the process, but I'm excited to meet Anthony. I don't know if you want to pop on and say hello, but no pressure. But I'll be following up after this meeting to schedule an informal talk with Karen and myself and then get that process moving. But again, Thanks, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Good to meet you all, and excited to be part of the and listening on the meeting hearings here and participate and learn more about issues related to water quality monitoring and look forward to the process of nomination and confirmation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. All right. Next, Lorian or Sam, do you have any updates on from the wastewater treatment works?
I've got something. So the wastewater community led by CASA over the past year has been working with a collaboration of NGO groups, including NRDC Clean Water Action, to address the issue of PFAS coming into wastewater treatment plants and then being discharged into drinking water sources, the environment, and via biosolids. ultimately, we found common cause with this group in that we feel that source control is the most important response to PFAS, and the preliminary results from Bakwa's study as well as the statewide study indicate that residential use is the main source of PFAS into wastewater treatment plants, not industry. So basically the products that we use in our homes, cosmetics, fabrics, textiles, and so on, that's what's contributing PFAS into the waste stream. This group co-sponsored AB 2247 this year, which was to establish a registry of PFAS containing products. It was vetoed. It passed the legislature and was vetoed by the governor because it would establish a new and expensive administrative program. So we are in the process right now of regrouping and trying to decide where we can target our resources to make the biggest difference in PFAS source control. So we'll happily update this group in the future on what direction we decide to go in.
Thanks, Lauren. I noticed that Sam is on the call too. I don't know if you had anything to report from Southern California.
Nothing from me, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Grant, anything from the stormwater community?
Yeah, just a couple brief updates. California Stormwater Quality Association held its annual conference in late October. First time back in person in 3 years. It was nice to see everyone in person again. CASQA will be holding its annual, what they call kind of the annual regulatory update meeting on January 19th. It's going to be a virtual meeting, so you can register for that and attend virtually. It's the focus of that annual meeting is really on the state of California stormwater. But of course, each year they have a number of representatives from state board and a lot of the regional boards send representatives and kind of highlight significant regulatory initiatives related to stormwater quality for the upcoming calendar year. And then you get a download of CASQA's priorities for the new year as well. Speaking of which, Karen, managing stormwater as a resource is one of CASQA's top priorities. So we definitely support your suggestion of maybe coalescing some stormwater representatives to look at the governor's one of the governor's priority strategies, which involves optimizing the capture of stormwater runoff to increase water resiliency. So any support you might need from the stormwater community on that, we'd be happy to pitch in and help on that. And I think Brian Lawrenson is also on the meeting. I don't know if Brian has any updates.
No, I don't have any updates. That's great, Grant.
That's all I had, Nick. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Mark Katie from CDFA. Do you have anything you want to update us on?
Not directly water quality related, but as far as new water, I don't know if what your scope is, but agriculture has been reducing water use, or at least water efficiency, improving water efficiency for a number of years, and CDFA has been investing in improving water use efficiency, and to the if I don't have it on the top of my head, but many millions of dollars in cost shares for farms throughout the state to improve their irrigation systems and reduce their water use or increase their water use efficiency. So that's something that is happening, and with Sigma, demand reduction is certainly going to be part of that, and certainly part of the water resiliency plan. which in turn, is land retirement. But for water quality monitoring, I don't really have anything new.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And I'm writing down as an action item for myself. I need to follow up with you on removing Amherst and then trying to talk about maybe potential replacement or nomination for somebody.
Yes.
Great. And I'll follow up with that. Okay, I touched base with Helen. She didn't have any updates. I don't think Marianne Viney is on the call. So Ray, do you have any updates?
I do. Coming up the week before our next meeting is the California Marine Protected Areas Decadal Review. So this is a 10-year review of the entire network of marine protected areas. A super heavy data lift on this review involving a lot of the stuff that we work on, water quality, fisheries, habitat, human uses, etc. So I just wanted to let everybody know that that's coming up, and I will throw the link to the Decadal Management Review page into the chat.
Thanks, Ray. I know we've been talking a little bit offline about an alternate. Do you want to bring that up now, or do you want to still kind of wait?
I think I'll wait on that. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm excited to see who might be the person. Steve, with this from Squirt, do you have anything to update us on? There.
I have my microphone on. Three things. First, I want to start off. Mark Starr was very complimentary of everybody else, but I was unaware of your retirement. Congratulations, but we're going to miss you. You have truly reinvigorated CDPH into the council, and I think it's hard to understate how effective that committee was. I look back 3 years ago, and we had a bunch of disparate efforts. We've had at least half a dozen different methods that were being used around the states by different groups. And the data was not flowing to people, was not being interpreted in a common sense. It wasn't being translated into management action. That committee, I think, did a wonderful job of bringing together the academic sector, the POTW sector, the group that actually supplies the samples, and then the public health department, and just a wonderful set of dialogues that really led to everybody coming together and doing things. I said, Mark was an incredibly important part of that process. I'd even say the lead of that process. So to go from where we were 3 years ago to where we are now, where it is kind of the core of the monitoring program, the core of the decision-making process, pretty impressive. So congratulations on the success, Mark. Good luck in retirement. The second thing I want to talk about is eDNA conference. I mentioned that as coming up at our last meeting. It took place about 2 weeks after our last meeting and was an incredible success. That was an in-person meeting. We had about 120 people in person. We had another few hundred that were actually online. But the in-person part was the part that was really successful. It really provided an opportunity. This was a national workshop, 8 federal agencies trying to come together around a national plan. It actually got the attention of the White House. The White House's Office of Science and Technology Policy Deputy Director actually gave a briefing at the meeting and asked for a briefing afterwards. And a large part of that briefing was how effective, how important it was, the interface between the states and the feds. The feds can't develop a program on their own. And sorry, I'm in my basement. You can hear the bathroom running. One of the things that also came out, Christine Sotelo was online before. I don't know whether she still is, but one of the things that really came out is that if you really want to put this stuff in place, there's more monitoring that goes on at the state level than at the federal level. And the states, if they're going to use it, need the SOPs, they need the accreditation process. And so that became really a focal point. How do the feds move towards an intercalibration exercise that yields you the information about how you develop an accreditation process? The influence of the people from California on this, the Monitoring Council had probably 20 or 30 people from its molecular methods work group at the meeting. A lot of effect, John Bishop, and Peter Vroom from our council served on a panel at the end of the first day to kind of talk about the transition into the future. Just very effective, and I think you'll see a lot on this into the future. I think this is an area we're very well set up with our molecular methods work group. I think you'll be hearing from them quite a bit over the next several months as to the follow-up from that. Last thing I had is we at SQUIRP do our BITE regional monitoring program once every 5 years. We had a kickoff meeting for that in September. Went very well, again, over 100 people in person. Most of you are familiar with the core of how we do it. So I thought I'd emphasize maybe 2 things that came up already today as points of emphasis. One, as we do new chemicals, anticipate that there will be a PFAS component, kind of looking at how much PFAS is out there in the ocean environment, Southern California. The second, though, Mark brought up in introducing Anthony, he brought up shellfish. One of the things that I think was very interesting is that we usually do some sort of biota. Usually it's a fish, although we have done some bird stuff in the past. This year it seems to be shellfish, with the idea that we're going to do some sort of regional shellfish program that looks at shellfish from a comparative perspective. Microplastics, emergent contaminants, pathogens. And so just kind of an opportunity there. Anybody who wants to get more involved in looking at the shellfish condition in Southern California while the regional survey. That's it for me.
Thanks, Steve. Is that shellfish monitoring intended to be all along the BITE or just localized like in Newport Bay like it's been in the past?
No, it's going to be all along the BITE. That's exactly right, Nick, is that we've had some success. We learned a lot from the kind of small project that we did in Newport Bay, and now we want to do it throughout the entire region.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think one of the, just to elaborate for some of the people who knew about the Newport Bay issue, that's again one of the issues with shellfish is pathogens, and there the issue is what do we want to use as the indicator for determining whether or not shellfish have a bacterial problem. Right now, the standard for shellfish waters is 14 fecal coliform per 100 mLs. You don't reach that in most of your cleanest waters. And so we're trying to look at, okay, given that we're not meeting that, how many pathogens do we truly have in the shellfish? What's the correlation between what we find in the water column and what we find? So that will clearly be one of the things, Nick, that gets done. But it's kind of fun to actually do shellfish from a HABs perspective, from a pathogen perspective, microplastics perspective, PFAS perspective.
I think it's really important, and it goes in line with some of the stuff that Kieran mentioned related to racial equity and a lot of the subsistence,
absolutely,
and tribal communities. So I'm excited that somebody's gonna be collecting shellfish data again.
Yeah, and we're right at the beginning of this implementation of this program. You know, the things I'm telling you are just the initial plans that flesh out over the next 3 to 6 months. So anybody who wants to get more actively involved in any of those components, now would be a great time to talk up.
Great. Okay, let's go to Krista. Do you have anything to update us on?
I don't really have updates. I want to thank both you and Karen for your help yesterday, connecting Coast with some folks at the regional boards and the state board around issues of kids. So Coast is trying to put together a team to respond to the UC Climate Action Research Initiative funding. The UC is in charge of $100 million allocated by the state for climate action. They're holding a competition, and we're looking at putting together a team that'll look at sea level rise and mobilization of contaminants in the coastal areas. And Nick and Karen helped me quite a bit yesterday. I want to say thanks for that. But also, if there's interest from other committee members, I would love to have PFAS, I guess, as an agenda item in the future. I'd like to learn more about it. Lori, sorry, is it Lori or Lorianne?
Lorianne.
Okay, Lorianne mentioned that, and Steve, it's something we're starting to pay more attention to, and so that's something I'd like to learn more about in the future, if appropriate.
I'd like to endorse that, Nick. I think that would be a great thing. There's a lot of disparate PFAS monitoring efforts going on around the state by different agencies with different purposes, and they're all well done individually, but I think there might be an opportunity to really look at this collectively. And then as Krista says, and then what are the opportunities to bring in the research components that follow? Might make for a very nice, multi-hour agenda item.
And I third that idea.
That's great. Thank you. And Chris, I don't know, can't speak. You chose an alternate. I know that Steve couldn't be here today, Steve Blumenshine, but I just wanted to, I don't know if you want to mention him or his background, or I can just kind of read his bio.
Sure. So the alternate for the scientific community academic is Dr. Steve Blumenshine. He is a faculty member at Fresno. He's done a lot of work on salmonids. He's currently the interim executive director of CSU Water. So the CSU has these system-wide affinity groups as a way to bring people together under different thematic headings. And so the water coast is coastal and ocean. The water group is more water resources, water rights, water issues with a heavier focus on the Central Valley. Steve and I work closely on a lot of things, so we talk at least once a week usually, and I'm sure he's really enthusiastic about being involved with the council, and so I'm sure we'll hear from him more and more.
Yeah, he's been a pleasure to correspond with. He's got some ideas for agenda items in the future too, so I'm looking forward to having him at a meeting in the future. Thanks for making a great decision. Let's see, and next, Peter, water supply. Any updates?
I just want to follow up on a couple of things that Karen mentioned regarding the equity working group. I know that the two co-chairs are busy working on some standardized language that can be incorporated into the charters of various other working groups. Initially, there had been a huge interest in the equity working group. The last meeting that was held was a lot smaller, I think, than expected. So for those of you that are advisors on council working groups, I just encourage you to encourage working group members to please participate also in the equity committee if they have an interest in it. I think that there's a lot of great things that can be accomplished, but we need people to get some of that stuff done.
Yes, thanks, Peter. And I know the Anna added, and she's been a participant, that the next meeting is believe scheduled for January 4th, and they're intending to meet quarterly, and hopefully, these initial few meetings are kind of getting Brian and Vicky's feet wet a little bit and kind of get the process going. But I think thanks to Anna and some other people's guidance, that I think we can start kind of getting things moving. And some of my work with the National Council has been helpful as well. Let's see. I got a hand up from Bakwa.
Yeah, is it possible to get a list of? Oh, I should update my name. Sorry.
That's okay.
Is it possible to get a list of the participants in the committees? I know
Sure.
that I know several folks who would be enthusiastic to participate in the equity committee, and probably some others, and it would be good to see who's already showing up and where the gaps are.
Sure. Write that down. Great. And I don't think Adam's on the call. So I'll go ahead and shift to my updates. If there's no other council member updates, nothing popped into anybody's mind. All right. So got several updates. The first is regarding the National Water Quality Monitoring Council. I, if you're not aware, am the EPA Region 9 state representative on that council. It's a national council that's historically been co-chaired by US EPA and USGS, although EPA has been taking a larger chair role since the last administration and some of the stuff that happened with FACA groups. That being said, the biggest product that council works on, and it's a really great group of across the states and across the feds that work on water quality monitoring issues, is this conference. It's a every other year conference that they try to put on, where it's a better part of a week, and there's tons of sessions across all the topics across water quality monitoring. This would be the second in-person one that I would be part of. The first one that I participated in was right when I came on board back in 2019. And then the last one was virtual. So I've been helping a lot with the planning of this one. Been lately working on scoring abstracts and creating sessions for the council, for the conference, rather. There's some 47 odd sessions across the 4 days. And this year it'll be held in Virginia Beach, Virginia, April 24th to 28th. Registration should be coming within the next 4 to 6 weeks. I'm also helping to create and moderate sessions as the co-chair of their Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Subcommittee. We've got a lot of great abstracts that I've seen from California and some of the work groups, some from SQUIRP that I've seen, and some from the Water Board. So I'm excited to see these sessions come to fruition. That will be primarily an in-person event, although there will be virtual registration options, but due to kind of the technological and monetary restraints, the virtual stuff will be really limited, which is unfortunate because a lot of states like California, travel out of state is really difficult, but it kind of is what it is. But there will be a lot of recorded asynchronous sessions. We've been working with the NOMS, who puts on the National Lakes group that helps kind of facilitate the contracting behind the conference, to make sure that the justice, equity, and diversity inclusion pieces are broadcast live, so that there's more wide participation, and that it's actually will be free. So that'll be an interesting experience to see how that goes. I'm looking forward to attending, and I'll be sharing the remote or the registration information as it comes out. The other thing I've been working on a lot lately is the 2022 California Water Data Challenge. We've been, a small group of us have been working on building off of the planning of that event. It was kicked off back in late June, early July with the symposium, and kicked off a lot of the kind of burgeoning data scientist groups to kind of help the State Water Board specifically address a lot of the data issues around open data, what data is available, the data gaps, and helping innovate. So we try to access a lot of these data scientists and groups that we wouldn't otherwise be in contact with. We just extended the submittal date, which we'll be announcing either today or tomorrow, to January 11th, 2023. It's going to give teams a little bit more time to finish their projects and submit them, and also allow for new teams, maybe people haven't heard of it or are just now hearing about it, and kind of gives them at least some time over the holidays to maybe work and create a project. Not necessarily everything doesn't have to necessarily be fully baked to be submitted, but we're excited. We have a couple of great projects that we know are being worked on and being submitted. And I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what else comes in. And we're looking to plan an awards ceremony in person, likely in San Diego. The details really haven't been figured out yet, but look for a flyer to come out, and I'll share with you all either today or tomorrow. And hopefully you can share it kind of widely with your contacts that might be interested in the kind of data science or water data realm, and see if they're interested or on submitting something. I'm going to skip the bacteria to the end because there's some other people that want to speak on it. So I'll skip to the estuary piece. So OPC, Ocean Protection Council, funded a project to establish a statewide estuary monitoring program. And as part of that project, there was a management advisory committee convened to help kind of guide the development of the monitoring program around specific key management questions. That group, that MAC, is kind of moving from program development to implementation of the statewide program. And Eric Stein of SQUIRP approached me a week or two ago to see if it made sense to roll that management advisory committee into the council's existing estuary work group space. For those of you that are maybe new to the council or aren't aware, the estuary work group has been kind of stagnant since probably 5 years, 5 or 6 years. It was mainly ran by the Department of Water Resources and focused almost 100% on the Bay Delta. They did do some great work. They created this portal, the Bay Delta Live, and they had some funding behind it. But once that project was completed, the estuary work group pretty much fizzled, and it was never one of the main kind of key misses of that group was that it didn't have a statewide estuary focus. It was really localized on the Bay Delta. So, this is a kind of a great opportunity. It would allow us to get the estuary work group active again by populating it with its initial composition of advisory committee members. And it's a great list Eric shared with me. And then they've already been working together for a couple of years, and would allow for us to identify additional stakeholders interested on estuary issues on a statewide level. So again, I think it's a great opportunity, and I was going to help foster this unless there's strong opposition from council members for me not to pursue this. So if there are, feel free to speak up, or if you would have support for it, that'd be great too. But the idea would be that I would ask council members to help find potential contacts that are working on the estuary space and help kind of build out the membership. I know they have some gaps, specifically with tribal partners, community groups, but it'd be great to get some of the academic community that are working in the estuary research space, as well as expanding out the regulated and regulator groups. I plan on working with Swamp and seeing if we get some regional board representation. But I don't know how the council feels about that. I was just kind of hoping it's a positive, but if there isn't anything that says, oh no, we don't want to kind of take on another work group.
I support. I think that's great. Yeah.
Great.
Definitely. Some of what the original estuary work group did was right along the lines of the, let's make the monitoring data that we collect for our specific purposes available and useful for other purposes. So yeah, I'm definitely supportive.
Great. Well,
but I'm not the only council member.
That's true.
I saw a thumbs up from Steve.
Good. Well, that's his staff. Well, if there's any, I was going to pursue it. So I'm going to, unless somebody reaches out to me for the good reason otherwise, but with the chair's support, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. We are still searching for a CNRA replacement for Mark Gold. We've been working with our contacts at Cali PA to work with CNRA to identify a person. It's been some transitions there, so we're trying to kind of work through the busy schedules across the two agencies to hopefully identify a new co-chair before our next meeting anyway, but we'll see how it goes.
Can I add a little commentary to that, Nick, and just mention that I think most folks on the call today probably already know that there is a new agency secretary at Cali PA, Yana Garcia, replacing Jared Blumenfeld, and she has a really strong emphasis and background in tribal interactions and coordination, as well as an interest in advancing our racial equity and diversity initiatives. And so really supportive of those things. We have yet to have a chance to brief her on the monitoring council, but hope to do so with the impetus being identifying a new representative or nominating a new representative for DPH, as well as identifying a new co-chair from CNRA and what she can do to support that. So more to come on that, but look forward to briefing her on all things the council, hopefully in 2023.
Great, thanks, Karen. I'm trying to blast through the last one. Is not super important, although OEMA is going through a little bit of leadership transitions, staff. So, long story short, I'm filling in a lot more and helping out OEMA and focusing a lot more of my time on OEMA projects, specifically a little bit on the racial equity action planning and building out a data related task force to that. So what that really means is less of my time is being focused on the council, which would be my normal main focus for the next several months. So I'll maybe relying on council members to help identify agenda items and help build out the meetings instead of me kind of hunting around and badgering people. So maybe asking for a little bit more help from the council members over the next 6 months or so until we kind of can identify some additional help at OEMA. And I think recognizing Ken's time, I might delay the last piece about the summit, maybe 1066 until after Ken's discussion, just because he's been kind enough to float between 2 meetings. So I'll come back to that announcement with the fact that Ken's here and is giving us some of his time. So I'll stop sharing and I will come back to 1066 after this. So thanks, Ken, for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Hi, everybody. If you don't know me, my name's Ken Schiff. I work here at SCORE. So, and it's, as always, a pleasure and honor to be in front of the council. So, Nick, I have until about 12:15. Is that what you're thinking?
You can have till 12:20 since I've stolen time from you. So yeah, as much time as you need.
Well, we can go as long or as short as you want. So, so I've been asked to talk about a project that SCORP has recently completed with State Water Board. And so I want to acknowledge my colleague on this project, Chris Began. He works in the Stormwater Planning Unit, or STORMS. And this was a STORMS project. And the genesis of it was Stormwater Planning Unit at State Board had run a series of workshops trying to identify areas of uncertainty in stormwater management and particularly with adaptive watershed management and reasonable potential type of issues. And so one of the things that came, there's obviously a list of things that where people wish they had more certainty, but one of them was monitoring. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So, and I do appreciate you, Nick, posting the link to the recent report, and I really like the action item of enlightenment. That was great. So, all right. So for those folks that don't really understand adaptive watershed management, let me kind of explain it. Basically, every watershed that's regulated in California has some type of watershed management plan as part of their municipal stormwater permit. And so this is, think of it as, they go by different names and initials. There's watershed management plans, water quality improvement plans, EWIMPs, you go down the list, but they all are trying to do the same thing, create some long and short-term planning to try and improve water quality and habitat in their watershed. And so they usually set a number of different goals. And I'm assuming you can see my cursor on the screen. Yeah, Nick?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. So they set a number of different goals. And then for each goal, they'll have some type of action that they'll put, they'll say, okay, this action or these actions will help me achieve my goal. And then there's something about monitoring to try and track progress. And then basically after some period of time, usually it's about 5 years, but sometimes it's less and sometimes it's a little more, you try and answer, well, have I achieved my goal? And so the answer might be yes. And you're like, great, we did awesome. Let's go on to the next goal. Sometimes the answer is no, we haven't achieved our goal. And then at that point, you need to come up with some options, right? Some alternative options, right? Let's do something else and see if it works. And that's what these basically circle back arrows are. You're essentially doing your adaptive management at that point. We tried something, it didn't work, let's try something else. So hopefully that makes sense. This is the focus of this project that I was asked to do for the storms unit was, let's take a look at the monitoring. It turned out that's where the uncertainty was. Although almost every regulated watershed in the state has some type of watershed management plan, and a lot of them have monitoring, and the problem is almost none of them really have gotten to this point of going, well, once I get in, how well do I do my monitoring, and how do I, once I get an answer to my monitoring, what am I going to do different? And it's like people just haven't thought that far ahead yet. And now that some of those initial watershed management plans are starting to get to their kind of 5-year mark to reevaluate, they're getting stuck in this part. So the idea was provide some of this guidance, particularly in the upfront monitoring program, so that it makes this part easier. So hopefully that makes sense, and it's certainly consistent with a monitoring council kind of concept. So I'll keep blasting through, and then I'll stop at some specific spots for folks to ask questions. So this particular project had 5 steps. The first one was form an advisory committee, and I'll show you the members of that in a second, and then come up with monitoring questions. I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. Come up with how to do the monitoring, and then some support tools to try and provide that statewide guidance on how to work through your questions in your monitoring framework. And then do a couple of case studies as kind of proof of concept, and maybe some educational or training tools. So I'm going to tell you right now that for me doing this study, the advisory committee was one of the most important steps, because I mean, I can tell people what they ought to be thinking about in terms of adaptively managing their watersheds, but honestly, I don't manage any watersheds. So I really needed an excellent advisory committee to help me get there. Here's the people that we were able to serve on this committee. And so you'll recognize most of the names, or at least the names in your neck of the woods. But what I liked about it is it had statewide coverage, right, from the north to the south. It had both regulated agencies as well as regulatory agencies. It had some non-governmental organizations. So it had a big kind of diversity of both space and kind of perspective on how to manage watersheds. I actually totaled it up, and I think out of this list, we had about 170 years of stormwater experience, municipal stormwater experience. So some very experienced people at a very high level that are essentially making these adaptive watershed management decisions, kind of on the daily basis. So I was grateful to have their interactions. So the second step was to create the monitoring questions. And these are really important because they're the cornerstone to any successful monitoring program, is all about the questions. And so everything else follows from the question, right? All the design stuff. But the key piece, and maybe even more important, honestly, than some of the tools I'm going to produce, is once you have a question and you monitor, what are you going to do with the answer once you have it? And I think this may be some of the most important parts of the document that's out there on the streets now, because if you can get some really smart people to agree on what you should do, then this provides the guidance both to the regulated agencies and the regulatory agencies about what some good next steps are when you're trying to adaptively manage. So I'll talk about a few of those as we get a little further. And then the idea was, it took like maybe 15 hours of meetings to come up with all of their questions. They had many dozens of them, and they broke into 5 different categories. So something about receiving water, something about outfalls or their discharge, something about best management practices or something they can do to reduce flow, volume, concentrations, load, something like that. Essentially, this is some management actions you're trying to do. Something about administering their program, like how can they make their program work better? and then something about communication, both internally and to the public. So there are these 5 different categories. And I said, well, I can't do all, whatever it was, 65 questions you had. Let's prioritize the top 3. And these are the top 3. And before I kind of go through them, I want to talk about why I like them, or why the committee liked them. First one is they apply statewide. Almost any watershed, I would hazard to say every watershed, will ask these 3 questions. They might have additional questions, but these are the 3 everybody's gonna ask. And so the first one really is about temporal trends, and that makes sense. You implement an action, and you're expecting things to improve. So you want some question about trends. And this could be in volume, this could be in concentrations, this could be in loads, but really you want to know if things are getting better, staying the same, or maybe getting worse. So trends is a big question. The second was about the best management practices. And in this case, they focus mostly on structural best management practices, or BMPs, and they want to know if their BMPs are working. So, especially if your trends are going in the wrong direction, you want to know if the things you're trying are actually working or not. So, and then the last one was, well, where am I going to put these BMPs? And so something, a spatial question of trying to find your hotspots. So before I go any further, this seems like a good spot to stop. And Nick, I'll ask if anybody on the council has a question or needs a clarification.
Thanks, Ken. Anybody, feel free to speak up, or if you'd like to raise your hand. I see Ray.
Yeah, Ken, I just wanted to say it was nice to see your linear chart. I've been seeing these circular charts for the last few years that I've really been pushing back on, that are basically endless studies, and it's good to see the committee, sees a beginning and an end as the goal.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It might be iterative, but the goal is to, succeed. So, yeah, the real thing of why this is an important project is because a lot of people, whether it's a circle or more linear, they're all thinking about the first few steps, and they haven't thought about these steps that are going to hit them in the out years. So that's what this project is supposed to help with. So I told you that the first step was to create this committee, which, had this 170 years of stormwater experience. Then the second was to come up with the questions, and they had a bunch, but they prioritized them. And then this third was to create these monitoring frameworks with some support tools. And the idea is we want to give people tools so they can create monitoring programs that'll get them the answers. And the point of giving this guidance is that so that regulators and regulated aren't arguing about how to design the monitoring program or what they should design the monitoring program around, but they should be talking about what they're going to do with the answers when they're done. And so this is to help get them over that hump of, no, this is right-sized monitoring program. So we created these web applications that are freely available on the web. And they had a few, I'll call philosophical guidance. The first one is that you should be able to load your own data into these web apps, right? Because, the term I heard was every watershed is unique, right? So you just can't create one for, LA and expect that to help for San Francisco. So, you can't do one in Central Coast and expect it to work in Central Valley. So every watershed is unique, so you should be able to load your own data into it. So that it should provide some visualizations, and that those visualizations should be simple, because it might not be super technical people that are either designing or talking about how to design these monitoring programs. So it should be straightforward. But then there are those people who are super into details. So we need to provide access to those details if they want them. So the third kind of philosophical thing was that it should be open source, so people can look under the hood on how it's done and modify it if they need to. So, but that it's not just a black box. And that there should be sufficient support, even now that the project's over. So, so we have this documentation, we have the tutorials on how to run these things. We've got a bunch of metadata, it's got error things. And honestly, people are still coming to me as we're starting to get the first case studies, which I'm glad to provide some personal help on. All right. So what I had promised Nick was that I would do some a little bit of a live demo with the time that we have left. And so I'll give you these slides, Nick, and so you can put them up on the the web page for the meeting, or put in your meeting minutes. Great. But here's a link to the document and the apps that support the 3 questions, right? Something about trends, something about BMPs, and something about hotspots. And then here's just a QR code, because I created that for the Casca meeting. And it was amazing when I show QR codes at meetings now, all of a sudden you see everybody in the audience lift their phones. So it's kind of funny. So I think what I want to do is talk about the BMP app first. And the reason why I want to do that is because it turns out there's no standard way to evaluate if a BMP is being effective at treating either volume or concentrations or loads. So one of the things we had to do for this study was create some type of rubric or algorithm on how to evaluate if a BMP is working or not. And so I'm going to start with this. And it looks kind of confusing at first, but after I describe it, I think it'll make intuitive sense to you. So the first thing to know is that it's designed for flow-through BMPs, although it could work for more infiltration BMPs if it's got overflow. On the x-axis is the influent concentration. So you plot the influent concentration here on the x-axis, and then the effluent on the y-axis. So in versus out. And then this diagonal line is the one-to-one line. And so if you're to the right of that line, then the effluent concentrations or loads or whatever you're plotting, if you're to the right of the line, the effluent is lower than your influent. And that's what you want, right? This thing's supposed to be treating your water, treating your stormwater. So you want the effluent to be lower than your influent. So you want all of your data here on the right side. If it's to the left side, then your effluent is higher than your influent. That's not good. So that means something in your BMP is adding, and that's not what you want. So now we have this kind of vertical and horizontal line. That's essentially your water quality benchmark or threshold or criteria or whatever kind of water quality goal you're shooting for. And so now you can further subdivide in how well your BMP is working, because if you're in this kind of lower right corner here, your influent is above your water quality threshold here on the vertical line, but your effluent is lower than your influent, so your BMP is working, and it's below the water quality threshold. So it comes in above the threshold, exits below the threshold. This is where we say, dude, your BMP is working perfect. That's exactly what you want. And then of course, if you're in the opposite corner, you're failing, all right? This is what we call epic fail. So, and then there's some categories in between, but you get the general idea. You want to be on the right side of the diagonal and preferably below this water quality threshold in your effluent. So hopefully that all makes sense to everybody. This is a good time to stop while I switch my screen. over to the web browser.
I had a quick question, Ken. This is Brian Larry Walker. What you used concentration for that example?
Yeah.
Was there a reason you used concentration overload for that particular? A lot of BMPs do flow reduction through infiltration.
So it could be used for volume. It could be used for load. The key to this app, which I'll show you in a moment, is that you stick in your own data from your own BMP, and you define your own water quality thresholds. So those could be volume, those could be peak flow numbers, those could be load numbers. As long as it's continuous data, it'll work. So hopefully that answers your question, Brian.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so here's the first of the 3 apps. Hopefully you're looking at it now. It says, welcome to the BMP Performance app. I'm waiting for a positive response here.
Hooray.
Yay. So, and here it's got a landing page with the, places to people to contact and a little introduction. But this is the first page. And remember, the first thing we wanted to do was let people use their own data. And so in this case, you can enter your data manually for your BMP, like each row, you have your influent and your effluent, and then each row would be a storm event or a sample. And so you can plug in your own data. You can also enter your own data if you want. So here's a file that I'm loading. You can download the template here. And if you got multiple types of data in that data set that you load, you can select which one you want. You can even put in your own what new water quality threshold. So just for you, Brian. And now the thing about it is that all of these apps, and this is an important thing to note, is that the app does not save any of the data that you load into it. It's all in flash memory. So as soon as you log out, it's done. And so that people really wanted that feature so that there wasn't, it's not like the state was spying on you. So there's the apps do not save the data in any form or fashion. And so here's the same kind of rubric that I just showed you. And then I said that that it essentially plots up your data. So here's the influent, here's the effluent, here's all the data in my data set, here's the diagonal line, here's the 12 micrograms per liter water quality threshold that I just typed in. And so you can see here's 4 different storm events, 3 of them are performing well, 1 failed. And then what it does is provide you a summary value in this kind of speedometer dial, and tells you how you're. So in this particular instance, the BMP is performing pretty well, and so there's nothing to do. Keep it going. Build more of these if you need to. So, but let's say it wasn't doing well. Maybe it was in the fail category. Maybe they were all up here in this fail, or at least to the left of the diagonal line. And so there's a few things that the steering, that this guidance committee provided, that if your BMP is not working, you can start, what they recommended is you go start evaluating your maintenance on this BMP. Maybe the BMP works fine. You just need to do a little maintenance on it to get it to work better. So, but maybe it's not that. And so you can now start comparing your BMP to every other BMP. And so that's why we created this last part of the web page. Is it my BMP, or is it all BMPs like this would never work? And so what we did was go to the International BMP database, download all of the data from that add a bunch more data from BMPs inside California. And you can use that as comparators to your BMP. So you can go in and select your analyte. You can select what kind of BMP you have. You can stick in your kind of average influent and effluent concentrations from your BMP. And what it does is it plots them all on this graphic here. So each of the black dots are other BMPs. In this case, grass strips for copper, and it plots it all up. And you can see here's the diagonal line again. And so grass strips do pretty good for copper. They're all to the right of that diagonal line. So life is good. And then this yellow dot tells you where you are relative to all those other BMPs. And so that's like, you're like, okay, that's doing pretty good. But I think the real key is in this graphic on the right, which is a probability distribution, which tells you how well your BMP is working, whether your BMP is meeting kind of, I'll just say, industry expectations. So what it is here's the effluent concentration, this dotted line on the y-axis. This dotted line is the 15 micrograms per liter of your effluent. And then this probability distribution on the x-axis is essentially what you would expect for your influent concentration, what all those other BMPs would produce as their effluent. And in this case, at 15 micrograms per liter, you're around 60 or 65 percentile of all these other BMPs, which means you're right around the middle. The BMP is doing what you expect. But honestly, if you're down here in this 10 or 20th percentile, there's probably something you need to do. So let me stop here. See if anybody has some reactions to these BMP, this particular app. And if you want, we're at 12:18. I can go to another app if you want, or we can call it a day here, Nick.
Yeah, I think Karen's got a hard out at 12:30, so we got about 2 minutes. But if folks have any questions for Ken based on what he's shown you so far, really cool app.
I'll just make a quick statement that I saw this in use with Ken and down here in Orange County, and it's really been a useful tool in helping us make some decisions down here. I really applaud this work. It's something that makes it easier for folks like me to understand the complexities of what's going on.
Yeah, and real quickly, Nick, I just want to say great job to Ken and the Squirp team and also Chris Began and the Storms team on this. It sounds like such a simple thing to be able to answer whether conditions are getting better or worse at your storm drains and your receiving waters, and whether or not your strategies are working effectively or not. And yet, we struggle as the stormwater discharger community, we struggle just being able to answer those questions. And these are incredibly helpful tools to help, I think Ken hit it on the nail when he said it provides a standardized way in order to be able to begin to answer those questions. And I love what has been developed here. I think something that the council should really look to promote and broaden the use of.
Great. Well, thanks, Ken, for coming on and showing us. And I'll share with the links that you shared if you share with me your slides, and I'll share with the links with the council members, and they can spread the word. And if anybody can poke around and has any questions, you can reach out.
Yep, they're free to use, and they should work in almost any browser. And yeah, thanks both Grant and Ray. The BMP app is also moving into LA County, where they're considering using it for their Safe Clean Water program, which is their big BMP funding initiative. And I was contacted just last week to start using the Trends app for tracking copper in stormwater to support the brake pad partnership and how effective that adaptive management action has been doing. So good stuff yet to come.
Well, kudos to the team and you. Thanks again, Karen.
Stop sharing. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you. Okay. Well, back to it. Sorry for the time. We had so many great updates, but thanks again, Ken. So back to my final update to the bacteria summit. For those of you that weren't aware, back in September, the Water Board, in coordination with CASCA, held a 3-day bacteria summit to discuss, what it means, what does safe to swim and safe to eat mean in regard to fecal indicator bacteria. That included the state of the science and opportunities for improvement in the regulatory and monitoring reporting programs. So it's really kind of an effort for sharing information and for the Water Board to kind of to hear potential opportunities and priorities for our stakeholders. There was a noticeable lack of presence from our NGO, tribal and community-based partners. And as a result, and some communication with those groups, we're planning a second summit that'll be planned for 2023. And we're working with those groups to focus the topics that meets their needs and regarding fecal indicator bacteria specifically and beneficial use supports. Among those topics that will be discussed, we'll likely provide an update on AB 1066. At this point, it's been slow moving, primarily due to the lack of resource allocation to the Water Board specifically to support the mandates. CDPH did assign a staff member, Joe Kristen, who's on the call or was on the call, and he's got a lot of experience with shellfish and bacteria and is a great candidate, and he's there to kind of waiting to take on the project. And I've gone out and did some outreach to our inland beach monitoring work group members to see if there was people that were willing to actively work on it, and there was some positive response. But again, without the resources allocated to the State Water Board to really take a strong co-chair position, it would be a large chunk of time. We're finding it difficult, the Water Board, to fulfill these basically unfunded mandates in our view. So we're continuing to work on the effort and exploring best options to proceed. Karen, if you want to add.
Yeah, I just want to, in thinking about what we can accomplish, because of course, the council is tasked with providing recommendations to the State Water Board. And I, while from my perspective as a manager at the State Water Board, the workload is difficult to absorb with everything else that we're being asked to do without additional resources. I don't want this to be something that the council gets a black eye for not getting something accomplished. And so I'd like to work with DPH. I do see Joe is still on. And so we're going to hopefully have a powwow in the not too distant future to talk about right sizing what this product will be in order to both get to a point where we have some criteria that what I call pass the laugh test, and get the conversation started that may also allow us to seek additional funding, both to make the criteria more robust, as well as getting funding to the counties to do the monitoring that we would be proposing as part of it. And so just really wanted to run by the council the concept that a document that's relatively streamlined. We get a few key people together from DPH and the water boards, of course, and our existing inland freshwater bacteria monitoring group, as well as maybe some county representatives. I would look to DPH for some help with getting a few key people together, having 2-3 meetings and coming up with some high-level criteria that we could propose as a starting point. I don't think that we would want to necessarily make it the end point, only because I don't think we have the resources or the time to publicly vet, thoroughly publicly vet the criteria at this stage. So more to come on it. but wanted to let you all know what I was thinking and hear any input that you all have.
Karen, this is Brian. Just one question on, like, when you talk about a streamlined document, I mean, the 1066 has a few steps in it, right? There's like survey, prioritize, and then consider recommendations for endpoints, right? Something like that. I can't remember exactly. So when we talk about streamlined document, are you talking about just doing a part of it, or like the first part of it, or you're just trying to lay out process? Not sure what that might look like. Just trying to get a good
Yeah,
picture
no,
of
and
it.
I'm not sure what it looks like either. And so I think we need to scope out what a streamlined approach would be. And certainly could report back at the next council meeting on what we come up with and get input. I'm just trying to figure out a way that we can accomplish something meaningful with the limited resources that we have.
Yeah, creative problem solving.
Maybe we can use Ken's tools. Any
And
other
I'll
feedback?
just say I look
Yeah.
forward to the discussion with DPH too.
I don't know if DPH, if Mark or if Joe, if you want to say anything. I know we've been in contact, but there hasn't been much information that I've had to share. All right.
I think that you summarized it pretty well, Nick, and I think the key is to get, some group together, whether it's a full, working group with members, like, sounds like the bill is looking for something along the lines of what Karen described, that's a little more streamlined. That sounds good to us. I don't, I mentioned earlier that Joe is in Anthony Chu's division, so we'll have that coverage and transition on the council as well. But I don't think we have anything more to add at this point. I think we're just trying to figure out the best steps as you guys described. Unless Anthony or Joe have anything to add.
Nothing new.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, with our final 2 minutes before Karen has to jump off, just item 5, and you can move this to email if we need to. Again, apologize for not having enough time. I thought we would have too much time. Basically, I put throughout these dates, I was just working with kind of our past schedule, working at holidays, etc., and making it quarterly. And so these are some dates I just threw out there. And I was working off of our old format, or the previous format, which would be, have an in-person hybrid longer meeting, and then follow that up with a shorter virtual meeting. Not this short. This is kind of it was an oddity, just timing, but then have, and switch off locations as well. We haven't been in Southern California in quite some time, not pre-pandemic. So this is what I threw out there, and I kind of posed the question on, do we want to keep this format in person? So I'll let Karen go before she has to go.
Yeah, I'll just weigh in 2 things. One is, I think having some level of in-person opportunity is valuable. I don't know about you all, but I really do like to get together with you. And it was nice to see you all in person, and we have a lot of turnover and new membership that I think it would be valuable to continue to have some level of in-person if possible, if the council is interested. And Nick, for what it's worth, all of those dates work for me. So if they need to change, let me know, but I got to run. So thanks everybody for a good meeting.
Thanks, Karen.
So feedback, it seems like you have 3 separate questions here. The first is the ratio of virtual to in-person. I think half and half is perfect. The north-south, I think that's perfect. And third question is those particular dates, they work for me.
Great.
Yeah, I support what you have here. Nick, makes sense if you're going to travel to meet a little bit longer too.
100%. Yeah, and we can still support travel either direction. It's just a matter of Steve, as Steve knows, reimbursement is more difficult, but if we can work with travel unit to book your stuff for you, then that's a much more streamlined way to do it. But the state can absorb those costs. Lauren says can't do the 7th, so we can maybe pivot if those dates look good. And you know, one important one for Steve is you know, Squirp available on the 23rd. Great. Okay, and then I'll be in contact, or I don't know if I'll follow up with you, Steve, to get in touch with your admin people and to lock that in.
And Nick, I think Casqua conference is like September 9th through 11th or something. So just heads up on that.
Okay, so I will look at an alternate September meeting date, the 3rd quarter.
September 11th through the 13th.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's next week.
Precise dates, yeah.
And maybe if Lauren can't, if maybe Lauren's the only person, and maybe if Sam is available, he could attend in her place. But if these look good for the majority of the group, then we'll put I'll send out holds for that. And thank you all for a great 2022, and I was happy to see you all again for at least 2 of the meetings, and I'm looking forward to going back down to Squirp next year, and hope you have a great holiday season, and thanks for all the great work.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye-bye.
Bye.